Please welcome to the stage Olaplex CEO JuE Wong. JuE will be interviewed by Shoptalk Senior Vice President of Content, Krystina Gustafson.
Girl power. It's girl power. I got that girl power. Yeah.
All right. Well, we are going from one unicorn to another unicorn. So thank you for joining us on the main stage, JuE.
Well, thank you, Krystina, for having me, and welcome everyone. Good to see every one of you here.
Awesome. Well, let's get started. Olaplex is a very fast-growing brand. I know I just mentioned that you guys are a unicorn, but for some folks in the audience, your sales increased last year 112% on a base of getting you to 600 million. So, not triple-digit digits on any small numbers that we're seeing here. I think there might be some folks in the audience, though, who might not be familiar with Olaplex. So I thought a good place to start today is just who is Olaplex? What is your mission?
So for the customers, we are very simply, we give you healthiest hair possible. And why is that possible? It's because hair bonds are hair agnostic. When I look at your hair bonds, I do not know whether you're a female, male, how old you are, and what your ethnicity is. But when I can repair your hair bonds with certainty, because it's patented, because it's potent, and because it's proven, and the results are very reliable, and you see results in the first use. That's for the consumers. But for the investors in the audience, I will tell you who we are. We are high growth, we have very strong cash flow generation, and more importantly, we have industry-leading EBITDA margins with a disruptive model that is the future of business.
Yeah, and I want to dig into that disruptive model a little bit because I think you've talked to the consumer, you've talked to the investor, but let's talk sort of the retail side of this. You have a pretty multi-pronged approach to your business. You guys have a professional business, which is your salon business. You have wholesale with your retail partners.
Correct.
And you also have direct-to-consumer. Can you talk us a little bit through those specific channels and what role each one uniquely plays?
Yeah, we look at our channels as synergistic and reinforcing. It is not about managing channel conflict. And when you don't have to manage channel conflict, you are really looking at it holistically. Our pro channel is all about giving us credibility and authority. Our retail channels builds brand awareness. And our direct-to-consumer, Olaplex.com especially, gives us consumer insights. And then the pure plays allows us to really be where the customer wants to be, when they want to shop, and however they want to find us.
Mm-hmm. No, it makes a lot of sense, but it also sounds quite challenging as I'm thinking about just, the different parts of your business. Everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of folks in the audience probably are dealing with that wholesale versus direct consumer divide, but then you toss in pro. And I'm curious, as you think about getting that, holy grail of the single consumer profile, what are some of the unique challenges you face in sort of getting all of your data in one cohesive place? Are there specific tools and technologies you're using? Like, how are you marrying this all together and then actioning on that data?
Well, we are very fortunate. Even though we are a company that has grown really fast, we are also very data-driven. So I have a transformation team that's made up of 4 data scientists, and they are able to really help us use data from trend analytics, search analytics, trade industry reports, and more importantly, tapping into the psyche of the customers. I like to call them future hunters, where they don't have to worry about what's tomorrow, but they have to worry for us, what's our next 5 years and our 10 years. And when you're able to get data of this nature and then really apply it to the various channels, or even synergistically and cohesively for all channels, then all boat rises.
Mm-hmm. So basically, what does that look like in practice? Are you having all the data coming into a customer data platform and then it's going out, this transformation team is looking at it holistically and then sharing the insights across channels? Like they basically just own all of your data strategy, is that right?
Correct, and also it's a two-way. Our transformation team is not just feeding information to the various sales team or the marketing team or the product development R&D team. Mm-hmm. What we do too is those teams feed back to the transformation team and say, we need certain data. And when they need certain findings or certain insights, that is where they go digging. And when you have a team that is only dedicated in helping you get to the source of truth, it really works because there's no hidden agenda. Nothing is worse when you ask somebody to do data analysis and all they're trying to do is to try to validate their own biases. I used to be a trader and my boss used to tell me numbers don't lie, but liars do numbers. That's why you always have to watch it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I want to double click into the transformation team because it's interesting. When I hear transformation team, I think, oh gosh, the company must be in crisis. We need a big transformation. Like, let's pull out the big guns, come out and overhaul the business. But you're talking about it as sort of a very proactive group. Tell me a little bit about what else this company does in the organization and kind of how it came to be.
Right. So specifically transformation?
Yes, the transformation.
Yeah, so transformation really started when I was in the company in year 2. And the reason why is when you double your business from triple digit, to close to a $300 million business, you realize that every dollar is going to be that much more difficult to do and to get. And so having a transformation team that, like I've said before, that really has no hidden agenda other than to get to the source of truth and the excitement that they find, when they discover an insight that we may feel like needs validation and they are validating it for us, or something that we thought not possible and they come up with. I'll give you a good example. When they were looking at data and they were telling us where we should be investing behind, and they found that there was 3 sources of truth when it came to consumers making decisions to buy hair care. The first source was recommendations from their hair professionals. Overwhelming, more than 60%. 30-some% said they will look at verified purchase reviews. And another 30+% said that it was reviews and recommendations, word of mouth from family and friends. And then we asked, what happened to celebrity endorsement and key opinion leaders and print media? And they're like, well, they are there, but they're in single digits and in low teens. So very quickly that help us make decisions where we put our investment, where we double click and double down. But that doesn't mean we will only do it one way, because as we all know, the way marketing is, you've got the upper funnel, the middle funnel, and the lower funnel. And you always want to make sure you cover everything. But obviously, as the CEO and my CFO, who was sitting next to me, he would say, go for the lower funnel because that's your conversion and that's your revenue. But like we all know, you cannot milk the cow for all it's worth. You've got to feed the cow.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And I know you guys have invested a lot in TikTok, but I'm curious, you've had a lot of success there, so maybe we can talk about that separately. But as you are thinking about new parts of the funnel to go after, are you going after the lower funnel, or are you challenging it a little bit and pushing back and looking at other platforms that achieve different goals?
Very good question. I actually see my CMO sitting in the audience. And obviously, we brought on a high caliber, high powered, great pedigree CMO, not to tell her what to do. We want her to guide us, direct us. And so we are open. As long as we know that it's going to bear a return, and that could be return in terms of not just on investment, but on return on advertising spend, return on how we partner with our retailers, this is where we go. And I always believe, I think I can't take credit for this thought, but Steve Jobs always said, you hire a great team, you get out of their way, and you let them go at it. Because if you're going to stand in their way, you're going to get rollover.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is she might be going against your wishes a little bit, but targeting the lower funnel enough to keep you...
As long as we continue our trajectory, we have given the street guidance that we will continue to grow 25 to 30%, year over year. And as long as we keep to that, we keep our investors happy, and I get to be, very proud of what we are looking and doing.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, let's shift gears a little bit, because I do also want to talk about Europe. Obviously, we're here at Shoptalk Europe, and you are a US-based company, which begs the question, of course, what are your plans for the Europe market? So as you think about approaching Europe, you're already here to some degree, but what are your plans? How are you going to penetrate the market? Is it going to be a similar approach to this 3-channel, multi-pronged approach that you have in the US?
So the audience might be surprised to hear, while Olaplex is going into our 8th year, we actually have 46% of our business in international. And majority of that is actually in Europe, continental Europe and in the UK. And the reason why we have been able to scale this fast is because we are able to take learnings from the US business model and replicate it very quickly in the UK, which is the omni-channel, the distribution roadmap that we have, and more importantly, really getting into the consumer insights. And that is the reason why we have recently set up Olaplex.com in the UK, Olaplex.com in France, Italy, Spain, because those consumer insights, I look at it this way, at the end of the day, A sale is transactional, but a service to your customer, when you're serving them, is experiential. And when you have experience, you have long-lasting customers. When it's all transactional, what you end up doing is you end up having a customer that's fleeting, right? If you constantly promote, constantly discount, constantly give them, deals, they will wait. So that is the reason why at Olaplex, you never have to wait. You replenish, and it's a consumable.
And so essentially what you're saying, though, is by taking that same strategic approach and hitting on all those channels in smart ways, you don't have to resort to that promotion. So it's a strategy that makes sense to replicate across somewhat of a similar consumer market. Are people consuming your product, Olaplex, in a similar way in Europe as they are in the US?
I would say in Europe, because there's a tradition of professional hairstylists where they are really respected, because if you look at the hairstylist, hair professional community in Europe, they actually have to go to university and really learn about the structure of hair, beauty, cosmetology. In the US, they go to cosmetology schools, so they still have to get their credentials. Right. And because there's respect for that, you find that it's much easier to really penetrate the market. It is a very fragmented market. There are more hair salons than there are, retail locations. But at the same time, the hair professionals are really the ones who know about hair. And when they are talking to you, they're not talking from a bias of what a brand wants them to say. They're talking from an experience. Right. And that was why long before Olaplex, there were a lot of hair professionals who came up with their own line because they could not find the products to satisfy their clients. Right. And I'm very glad to say that since Olaplex has come into the mix, they have been able to focus on their artistry instead of trying to focus on what their clients need to use, because they can easily make that referral from what we offer.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I know you mentioned the UK specifically before and getting your website up and running here. What other markets are kind of, in your view, the biggest opportunities for you, both short-term and long-term?
Right. So Italy, Spain, and France are, in the mix already. We have one in Australia. We'll be looking at one in New Zealand. And obviously, we are already in Tmall Global, which is China. And that business is on fire purely because you can't argue with 1.4 billion people on Earth, right? Who are constantly consuming and looking for something. So we believe the digital age is not only going to be here to stay, but really a place where people are going to discover, they're going to be entertained, they're going to get education, and then we're going to be able to monetize it.
Yeah, and how much, I would assume that probably the way you're describing sort of the salon culture here, the European consumer is probably a more natural target for sales. Do you view sort of China as like, okay, once we sort of build credibility in the US, then we go to Europe, then we get, like, is that how you think about the rollout strategy?
So one of the reasons why, obviously as a US company, the US has always been our focus. And then when we started moving to the other markets, UK very logical because it's an English-speaking market, has very similar footprint as in the US, very similar business dynamics. And if you think about it, even though it probably pains me to say it, working for a US company, the European market does represent authority when it comes to beauty. And so trust and respect has to be earned, especially in Asia. And there's a reason why when you look at Asia, a lot of the household brands have longevity and has a lot of penetration because they have earned their trust and respect. Yeah. Whereas in the US, indie brands and emerging brands do a lot better because we want the newness. So knowing the psyche of the market helps us message, position, and really brand ourselves more appropriately, even though we will never change the core of who we are.
Yeah, so it sounds like in some ways it's a little bit harder to be a challenger brand coming into these emerging markets, but I'm sure the business will continue to grow. I do want to switch gears here because time is running out very quickly. I know you guys recently introduced a virtual Olaplex team member, and just to kind of get the audience up to speed on what that was, it's quite different than what Roland Palmer was talking about earlier with virtual influencers. This is actually something that combines the images and emotional quality of 240 brand advocates and employees into one composite character. So really more sort of a customer service sort of service than an influencer itself. I know through past conversations with you, though, that this was not an easy thing to pull off. It took, I think, several years, a lot of searching for a solution provider. Why was this so important to you to pull off?
So one thing is very clear. I had the idea for several years, but at Olaplex, like anything, we do at warp speed. So we essentially did this in under 6 months.
We did it.
The reason why was the technology was available. When I was thinking about in 2017, everybody looked at me like I came from Mars. But in 2020, in 2022, when we brought it up again, it was like, yeah, it's possible. And why it was so important to us is that we talk about machine learning, we talk about AI, we talk about virtual. It feels very cold. And as consumers, we all know we rather touch base with a sense, with a high touch point, with a human touch. And the synthesis of this 240 of us was important because it's a reflection, it captured all of us into one virtual teammate. And that virtual teammate is a reflection of who we are. We as a company is 77% female and 16% identify as minority, ethnic minority. Our board is 88% female and again, about 14% ethnic minority. We are very proud of that not because we are trying to be legislated into good behavior, but because we believe that's the right thing to do. And when you mirror the customers that you serve, where 80% of our hair professionals are female and 22% are minority, when you are able to see yourself mirrored back into the brand, you win.
Yep.
And we have been winning because we know the importance of looking like who we serve.
Yeah, and I mean, I would imagine just kind of going back to the beginning of the conversation when you were talking about the role of the stylists, that's not scalable entirely, right? At some point, if people are looking for advice, you do need to roll out some sort of virtual assistant. So sort of combining that personal touch at scale seems like a good approach.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense because I think ultimately we still want to maintain that high touch, but we need to scale that performance and allow everyone to feel the same love and the same professional touch that Olaplex has to offer. So this is going to be our journey. We are going to travel that way, and we will continue to deliver that way.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, I want to shift gears again, and you kind of touched on a little bit of this when you were talking about the diversity of your leadership team, your board, your overall organization. But purpose, of course, is a huge aspect of brand building today, and brand building in an authentic way, I would also add. In addition to that, you guys have also done a lot to make your packaging more sustainable. But I'm curious, as you look at all the different parts of the ESG agenda, there are so many things that you could tackle. I'm sure every company in this audience here today wants to be a better corporate citizen of the world. How do you go about deciding which pillars of your ESG agenda are worth leaning into?
Yeah, I think what is always important is not to jump on a bandwagon and say, everybody is on that path, so let me be part of it. I think ultimately it's social impact. If you're going to do good, ask yourself, can you maximize and optimize that performance? And for Olaplex, it was very clear that by not using secondary packaging was our hallmark, and it was a hallmark well before my time, which shows that that was the company's DNA. If you continue to really, you talk about being authentic,
Yep.
Your authenticity has to reflect what you believe in and what you do because it comes across as really real. And I think the other thing we want to do is we can't rest on our laurels. Just because we don't have secondary packaging, that's not the only story we can tell. There are a lot of advancement, whether it comes to your vendor partners, your raw material partners, are they being held accountable? If you only partner with people that really are held accountable that way and are socially responsible, you amplify the reach and the good that you can be done. So we will continue to do that. In fact, we joined an organization called EcoVadis that's doing exactly that. That helps us put like-minded vendors and raw material suppliers together. And then ultimately, we also want to get into what we call plastic neutrality, where we can join forces with companies that we can contribute to a social impact activation. And I think as leadership, I am not the only one. There are a lot of our team members as well as our operators in the mix that are really also keeping us honest. The fact that NASDAQ, which is in a publicly establishment that looks at all the stock and that you activate yourself on that platform, already said that unless you have 2 diverse board candidates, they are not going to have you list with them.
Yep.
So that itself is helping companies be more aware.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great recommendation. I mean, it's basically sort of leaning into your strengths and then finding partners and strategies that you can really use to sort of amplify the good that you're already doing in the world. Well, we are quickly running out of
I
time.
know, I
It goes
see.
so fast. I know, it's like flashing. But anyway, I have to wrap with one last question. It's been 5 years since we were in Europe as the Shoptalk team. Hopefully, it won't be another 5. Hopefully, things will get a little smoother in the world, and we'll be back here with everyone in 1 year. But let's pretend it's 5 years. It's 5 years from now. We're back on the stage together for the first time. How's Olaplex look different?
I think what it's going to be is that we will continue to focus on what we do best. We will continue to be disruptive in everything that we do. And our work from home culture will be, something that we treasure. And I think you will continue to get products that is high performance. And then perhaps you will have more of me, not sitting here, but 4 of me in hologram forms, sitting everywhere else.
It'll be a virtual JuE joining
Yes,
us on
but
stage.
with my with my consciousness streaming through the hologram. That is how I see 5 years from now, and I think it can happen.
It's a bold vision, but we'll
is a
look
bold
forward
vision.
to it. Well, thank you so much, JuE.
Thank you,
you all for
Krystina.
joining us.
Thank you, guys.